Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for prize fighters, circus freaks, and gangsters. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Greta.
And today we are talking about episode 6 of the awesome Max Show Warrior, entitled Chewed Up, Spit Out, and Stepped On.
And this one started out, after last week, I was wondering, so how fast is Ah Sahm going to get back on his penny bullshit? And the answer was, right away.
Oh, right out of the gate, he is into Penny. I mean, he was thinking about Penny the entire last episode, so we knew he was rushing back into her heaving bosoms.
Well, that's not the only thing heaving. We have the most gorgeous lion dance spring festival going on. For me, I grew up here on the West Coast in Seattle. Chinatown has like a really prevalent spring festival, lion dance, Chinese New Year thing going on. So once they pulled back far enough from the drum to see that the guy was walking and I could see the edge of the drum, I was right in it. I knew exactly what was going on.
Oh, that's awesome. So this is still pretty true to the modern experience?
Yeah, some of the lion dance costumes are more are shinier, obviously.
Okay.
And since doing the lion dance is often very connected to kung fu, some of the lion dance tricks are now wilder and more complicated. But other than that, like I was right in it. I knew exactly what was going on.
That's amazing. Well, it makes sense because as it turns out, they had real life lion dancers doing that performance, and that was a Chinese New Year performance from San Francisco. Those were all performers that perform now. And that is the biggest Chinese New Year festival outside of China, the one in San Francisco.
I believe it.
That is the legit thing. And they said they spent the most money on that scene, and that was the most intricate scene. Everybody was so excited to be in that scene because it was so beautiful.
Well, then I'm glad they spent so much time on it because I was enjoying the hell out of it, too. I was just like, this is everything right here.
You might be interested to note that the actor who plays your beloved Richard Lee is British. He's a British man.
Oh, yeah. I can tell when his southern accent slips, I can sometimes hear the wrong vowels coming through. So I had to look him up. I was like, is he South African or is he British? Because, they're filming the show in South Africa. So I thought he might be South African. But speaking of the Georgia jawline, he was determined to have fun, and Bill O'Hara was not. He was going to be miserable, goddammit.
Oh, no. He's just grumping through the whole thing. Every time Richard Lee grabs what is he eating? Like a sausage or something?
Yeah, I think it's like a sausage.
Yeah, and he just immediately starts grumping. It's probably dogs and cats, and Richard Lee immediately claps back. No, this is pork. I was a pig farmer, and this is definitely pork. I know the taste of pork. This is delicious pork.
Goddamn dog eaters. And then, of course, being the nicest man in the world, he's like, I'm sure Americans have also had to eat dogs at times. Well, they didn't enjoy it. It's like, I don't know.
Well, being the quote unquote nicest man in the world, we're starting to see that Richard has in this episode. We get to start to see a little bit of the frayed edges around his facade there, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Not yet, but it's very exciting. I'm enjoying how everybody has their oily, dark secrets.
Yeah, but at this point, if, as somebody watching the show for the first time and not going, like, I'm sort of enjoying how he's definitely preserving his white glove persona.
Oh, yeah, they're like grown-up Goofus and Gallant in this scene from Highlights magazine. Like,
that was awesome.
Yeah, that was how about that for a reference?
There you go.
For anybody who is under the age of 40, Highlights magazine is a Christian magazine for children that used to be in doctor's offices when we were growing up. And
oh, yeah.
Goofus and Gallant were a cartoon in it, and Goofus was the bad one, and Gallant was the good one, obviously.
Yeah, so. I mean, I always loved the object searches. What's different? Speaking of which of these things don't belong here, Wong Chow, he's playing his Some of My Best Friends Are Chinese character as he's leading the nice white ladies in to watch Chinese New Year.
Oh, yeah, and I thought that was really cool that he's, all of a sudden now he's a tour guide. So he's an arms dealer to the underworld and a tour guide to rich white ladies.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about before, he's such a chameleon, and he has a different voice for every sort of seat of power he speaks to. And so it was kind of fun to see, oh, nope, he's not done yet. He has yet another facet.
Yes, yes. Oh, and you know what I noticed in watching the making of after the show was that all of these actors look much, much younger in real life than they do on this show, which is something you never see in a show. But it really is kind of true to the era when everybody just looked old before their time back then.
Yeah, and I think they're doing the lighting to definitely pick up the wrinkles that everybody has, whereas in sort of modern photographic lighting, they sort of, the lenses they use and the directional lighting that they use, or the non-directional lighting they use, de-emphasize all of the aging we have on us.
Yeah, well, I mean, you really want to accentuate their grimacing and their permanent frowns. I mean, everybody has resting bitch face in the 19th century.
With good reason, we keep being reminded of.
Yeah, their teeth hurt and their they had dysentery. There's a lot of reasons to be mad in the 19th century.
Yeah. So we have, all of this excitement building. And so, I love me a good exploding sex trope.
Wait, how did you get an exploding sex trope out of this?
Well, you know how they always don't show orgasm on TV?
Oh, I see. So just to paint the picture for anybody who's not watching the show right now, Ah Sahm and Penny are banging, and then they keep cutting to the scene in the parade where everybody is marching around, and then you start to see these guys in masks who are up to some nefariousness as the pace is picking up, and they're banging harder and they're grunting harder, and then as
the music's
they're getting
going, and the fireworks are going off, and just everything's getting more and more exciting. I mean, it's every sort of like cutting back and forth to sex and something exciting.
Yes, until finally somebody tries to explode Father June with dynamite.
Yeah, and there's that great shot where young June, yells Bolo, and Bolo grabs Father June, and they dive off the viewing platform, and it's very, very dramatic.
Yes. Oh, and the actor Father June said that he's always been a huge fan of action movies, and that was so much fun for him to do because he's never been exploded in a movie, or a TV show. So that he was so excited to be exploded finally. But yeah. So the explosion goes off, and then we're back to Ah Sahm and Penny looking at each other in a bathtub now. They're just...
Yes. And so now you know what the bathtub is for.
So they're having a soak after all their banging. Yes. Well, if you're going to have a gigantic clawfoot bathtub in the middle of a room, I guess it's for post-banging
right.
soak.
You don't want to go home smelling like sex. That's tacky, Jamie.
That is, well, yeah. I mean, you're going to go home stinking regardless. I mean, they'd probably be suspicious. Like, what are you doing bathing? Number one. And then two, you've now bathed in the middle of a day on a Wednesday? What?
Well,
what precipitated a Wednesday bath? Baths are on Sunday.
Well, she's a rich lady, so she can take baths whenever she wants to, absolutely just drench herself in eau de cologne. So the fact that she smells like lilac water, that's par for the rich lady course.
It seems like such a pain in the ass to shower prior to plumbing. Like, you kind of get it. Like, what?
Oh, no, they had
why didn't
plumbing.
they use gravity showers or something? Like, my God, there are so many solutions to bathing that... It just seems like we wasted a lot of effort back in the 19th century. But anyway, all right, I digress.
Yeah.
I get off on my plumbing tangent every time I start talking about the 19th century.
Well, sometimes wasting effort is a really good way to show off your wealth flex, but...
There is that. And when you got slaves or whatever, you might as well just have them do something.
Yeah. So we've got one dead white lady and a very banged up Father June.
Yes. One of the little white ladies who was doing a tour of Chinatown was exploded.
Yeah. So we have Ah Sahm and Penny in the bathtub.
Yes.
Talking politics. And this is, or not politics, but talking backstory. And yeah, this is where I'm talking about that Ah Sahm comes from a really low status family. His father was a farmer. It clearly could have gotten taken over by a warlord. And so Zhaojing, or Mai Ling now, she basically sold herself off to save the farm.
Right. And just for anybody who might be curious, like when he said there was a local warlord, This isn't like Japan at the time where they had daimyos and things like that. China was in a constant state of revolution from basically the 1800s through the Chinese takeover, or the communist takeover in 1949. So they were just constantly having revolutions. So local warlords constantly ruled different sections of China, and it got especially bad in the 1900s. But so he was forced to. I mean, that daimyo was, what was the story again? Oh, that's right. He accidentally killed that warlord's son in a fist fight because he was trying to prove that he was the best fighter in the area.
Yeah.
And he didn't know that this warlord was the father of the guy he went to go fight. The guy didn't want to fight, and then he punched him once, and the guy fell down and hit his head and died, which, to any of my young male readers, is always an issue. So if you are going to get in a fist fight, make sure you catch their head before it hits the pavement, or you might catch a case.
Yeah. The cobblestone streets of the day definitely made that more likely and much worse.
Yeah. It just unbelievable. The amount of ways you could have, it's a million ways to die in the West was not, I mean, it probably undersold the amount of ways you could die in the West. Anytime you got a cut, you could die of an infection, which is just wild.
Oh, yeah. So we've got Penny and Ah Sahm are going to have sort of kind of possibly going home awkward things, but not anywhere near as awkward as Bill O'Hara coming home to his house.
Oh, you skipped over a really interesting point in that scene, though, when the two of them are talking and he's telling her the story of how he came here to say, he doesn't tell Penny who his sister is, but he does say that he was trying to save her. And then she makes the point, well, women don't need saving. Like, clearly she didn't need saving, and women are capable of saving themselves. And he just doesn't reply. He just kind of looks down. You know what I mean? But I think that's a tough realization for a 19th century man to have. And that's what he's conveying. Is that what you got out of it?
Yeah, there was a lot of sort of difficult stuff there. Penny's trying to prove one point, and I also think to a certain extent she's right, but then Ah Sam's like, yeah, I'm also not going to burst your bubble because there are some ways, and there are a lot of women who are in situations that can't save themselves or don't see how.
Well, yeah, because she's here in her lady lair where she is like kind of the princess of her lady lair, but she's only afforded that luxury because she's rich as hell.
Right.
So he's looking at her like, yeah, you are a capable woman, but you're also a capable rich woman who has lots of opportunities.
And then there's Mai Ling, who made herself super rich. And so, yeah, we flip over to Mrs. O'Hara, who, is sitting there with Jack Damon holding the baby when Bill O'Hara comes home.
She is the most amazing, aggrieved, beleaguered wife ever in a television. I mean, this woman was built to star as a mother in a Dickens novel, or like the mom in a live action, or in The Jungle, like Ogden Nash's The Jungle, or it wasn't Ogden Nash. It was, you know the one I'm talking about, The Jungle.
The meatpacking plant.
Yes.
It'll come to me.
Yes. Not Ogden Nash, but
Upton Sinclair.
Yes. Anyway, luckily this is not a literature podcast. But yes, because she's always holding a baby, and the baby's always crying. She's always shushing a baby and tending to 3 other kids at the time. How many kids do they have again? 7?
It's only 5. Calm down. I mean, Bill forgets sometime and thinks at 4, but
I mean, do we know how high Bill can count? He certainly can't pay his debts. He can't pay his debts, so maybe that's part of the problem.
No. And that's why Jack Damon is there.
Oh, yes. Looking menacing as hell, too. But being polite as could be, but he's this giant, menacing Irish man with a shillelagh who's clearly an enforcer. The wife knows he's there to collect money, too.
And he's also doing the, super polite thing, smiling while he's holding the baby. And, yeah, Mrs. O'Hara is like, Jesus Christ, Bill, how many people are going to come to our house and threaten our children?
Yeah, exactly. That has to be exhausting after a while. This woman doesn't have any recourse for divorce. She's just stuck with this man until somebody finally kills him.
Yeah, she's Catholic and she's in America. She has children with this guy. So there's 3 reasons she probably can't get a divorce right there.
Yeah,
boom.
Miserable. But so he makes his not so veiled threat that the 3 weeks is up, and now I'm wondering, how is he going to get out of it? My wheels are turning.
Yes.
I figured that he might go to Leary, but I didn't predict how sneaky he'd be. Because I didn't predict this character really had the depth of intellect to come up with a plan that was terribly cunning or had 2 steps in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because he does come off sort of as like the dumb Irish cop. But on the other hand, he has risen in the ranks in the police. So maybe there's something there.
You make a point.
Before we get to find out how Bill O'Hara is going to dig up, we get a little time with young June and realize that, like, yeah, he wants to impress his dad. And one day he wants to be in charge of the Tong. But good God, not yet.
Yeah, no, he's certainly, and he's clearly not ready because he is still doing all of the dumbass, impetuous 20-year-old bullshit that every man, we're just incapable of getting out of our own way at that age. We just want to fight everything, and if we're not fighting it, we want to fuck it. I don't know what's wrong with us.
And if you beat up my dad right in front of me, I want to fight even more.
Yeah, and so this man, he wants to fight everybody, and he's ready to go. And Ah Sahm gets his back. Ah Sahm is the first person to recognize that young June is the leader, too. He steps up and says, we're going to listen to young June. He wants to scrap, let's scrap. And then Bolo jumps up and is like, yeah, we're scrapping, let's get it.
Oh, yeah. It's like, fight.
Yeah.
I want to fight. And the business guys are like, chill. It's going to cut into our profits.
Yeah.
Chill.
Yeah.
No, fight.
Bolo, if you kill everyone in this town, no one can buy anything. I don't care.
But yeah, we also, speaking of Bill and coming up with plans, so we're in we're back in the police department, and there is Richard Lee looking like a golden retriever with his head tilted to the side.
So he's looking at a map that you can actually access online.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a map of Chinatown, and it shows all of the illegal shit that's going on in Chinatown in the, I think it's the 1880s. But it has everything delineated by, like, whether it's a house of prostitution or a gambling den or an opium den and which gang controls it. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
and he's definitely seems to be sorting this out. Okay, this is Hopway, this is Longzi, this is Feng Hai. He's trying to map it out. He's trying to get a lay of the land, and oh my God, Bill O'Hara could not be bothered.
No. So it was funny when you just said, like, he has risen through the ranks. So it's so funny whenever every time he sees Richard Lee actually doing actual police work. And he says that, like, yeah, well, I was sitting at my desk. I just figured I'd get down to doing some police work. Oh,
that was a 1-2 punch. Because, like, I'm doing police work, but I was at my desk. Where the fuck were you?
Yeah. I've been at work, dickhead. I was here. I was bored. I had to do something.
And that was Leary standing outside, right? When Richard is looking at the map and then he looks through the window.
I don't think we haven't been introduced to that character yet.
Oh, okay. I sort of assumed it was Leary. Oh, okay. So he's just a mysterious stranger looking threatening in a hat. Okay.
Yeah. He's a mysterious stranger staring at him. And now that's why I said now we're starting to see. Maybe he didn't go far enough from Georgia because there's this weird guy looking, and he's like, this dude's looking for me. Because he looks at the man through the glass and he's like, yeah, that guy just looked me in the face. And it's like, yeah, that's the guy I'm looking for. All right, what do I do with this?
And it was a good shot because it was sort of reflecty. And so you have like a half reflection on the glass. And so, yeah, he's meant to be unclear to me as the viewer, and I think they did a really good job of that because I mistook him for Leary.
Yes.
Which having some confusion right there is pretty fun. So O'Hara shows up and starts just insulting the shit out of Richard there, and then asks a favor. I'm like, way to butter up your partner there, dude.
Yeah. Hey, you're a big pussy, but do you mind guarding my wife for me while I try to skip out on this debt that I owe?
And then we get to,
And of course, Richard Lee, being the super nice guy that he is like, sure, I'll do whatever you like, and I won't tell your wife a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so we get to more of the chatty stuff that you were talking about, where we have Sam Blake making himself all pretty to go visit with Senator Crestwood.
Oh, yes. And I didn't look up Senator Crestwood to see if he was an actual historical figure. Did you?
I didn't, because I don't...
Oh, okay.
And he might be, but at this point, I don't think it's like super duper important. I think it was way, way more important to have Sam Blake, who is like, I am king shit of this town, start to get some of his comeuppance. So,
I wouldn't say he got some of his comeuppance. I think he found out at that meeting, not only is he not in charge, he is at least third in command. At least. That's a best case scenario. He's third in command.
see, I felt like nothing has happened to him. I just felt like the light was dawning on him. Like he sits down at the table and he's got on like this tweed coat and he's looking okay. Like he's a pretty wealthy dude. He's San Francisco rich. But then Senator Crestwood shows up in his velvet coat and he's like, I am Washington, D.C. grifter level rich. So suck it, baby boy.
Yeah, that was a fantastic coat. I think Steve Harvey might be wearing that coat if he ever sees his show, because that seems like Steve Harvey's alley.
But I was just cracking up because Crestwood's like, Jesus, Sam, what's with all this crime in San Francisco? I thought you were supposed to be mayor here. And Sam's like, oh, I'm very sorry, Senator Crestwood, basically.
Yeah, he points to the explosion on the newspaper. Yeah, he's breaking his balls, and then he turns around, he's like, oh yeah, you just sit there. Buckley and I are gonna go take a walk, and then looks at Buckley and is like, "Thanks for doing that explosion stuff. That was good work.
Oh yeah, no, I think at that point Sam was just sort of sitting there with his mouth open, going, "Oh my God, yeah."
Yeah, I think that's when he found out he was third string. He thought maybe he was backup quarterback, and then the guy invites Buckley to walk with him, and he's like, shit.
Yeah. So after Sam Blake's humiliation, it's time for a nice big throwdown and some more humiliation, fighting style.
Oh yes, it is time for them to take it to the Hop Way, and
Hop Way goes into
I'm sorry.
High.
Yeah, the Fong Hai. I'm getting my names confused.
I'll keep you straight.
Thank you. Yes, the Fong Hai, the Mongolians, and so they go in, and that's the first time we get to see Bolo fight alongside Young Jun and Ah Sahm, and all three of them have unique styles to themselves, which I found really cool.
Yeah, what I was saying before, that like each of the fight coordinators are given these guys' personalities with their fight styles. They went all out here with that.
Yeah, and one thing that I realized in the last 24 hours is that their fighting style, if you were to happen to know their fighting style, if you were happen to recognize it in the time period, you would actually know some of their politics by their fight style, because you would know whether or not, I think I mentioned that there were the Wudong and the Shaolin back then, and it wasn't the Wu-Tang Clan, but the Wudong was just it was the Taoist version of Shaolin martial arts, and the Shaolin were Buddhist. Well, the Taoists were the Ming, they were the former Ming people, and they were very, very serious about hierarchies. So if you, those people are very, very, if you see anybody using the soft styles, like Tai Chi style movements or soft grappling moves, the hierarchy will be important to them. Whereas opposed to the Buddhists, who are going to be they're going to have more of a egalitarian sentimentality. Right.
Okay. But yeah, the different weapons they were using, there was a lot of super close in fighting because they were in this restricted space.
Yep.
How many different weapons did they use, not including chairs?
I wasn't keeping count, but I mean, Young Jun was going crazy with his switchblades, doing his Ime piercers moves, which were dope. And then you had a bunch of Wing Chun moves out of Ah Sahm, because he was doing all the close-in stuff. And, I mean, he might as well have been beating up a wooden dummy in half the moves. It was really fun. And then you had Bolo just going crazy in the background with every weapon he could find. That's where but he took out an entire room of people by himself.
Right.
While Ah Sahm and Young Jun, who looked superhuman while they were fighting 3-on-1 or whatever, they walk into the other room and they're like, good God, you killed everybody without us?
Yeah, because... chairs aside, I saw a cleaver flying through the air. There were definitely hatchets involved. Some of these guys had the big long knives on their hips, kind of it was like a curved Bowie knife, basically. I mean, just don't wear a weapon to a Bolo fight. That's all I could say, because he will use it on you.
Yeah, he's just going to take it from you and use it to kill you.
Yeah. And then, of course, young June, doing the coup de grace on the whole fight by pulling out a pistol.
Yeah, and then Ah Sahm looks at him and goes, you had that the entire time?
Yeah.
So these fights, by the way, the Tong fights, were occasionally known that they were going to occur beforehand because betting occurred on the fights.
Okay, so it's more like the street fights where you have kind of people standing or sitting like on the balconies and the roofs and stuff to watch.
Yep. Yeah, and there was one fight that happened in a town outside of San Francisco.
Okay.
The name of it is not coming to me immediately, but Weaverville, California. 2,000 Tong fought.
Yay.
2,000 Tongs fought in 1854, and people bet on it all crazy. 20 people died, but they had makeshift weapons that they both sides went to the same blacksmith, had him fashion all these spears and stuff, and then they drilled in the streets with all of these different weapons and then had a fight. So these guys were crazy good fighters for real.
And they really enjoyed fighting, clearly, if they're doing all this stuff.
Yes. So when you're watching this show, it might not even have been as brutal as the real life. Like, those guys got it. So that story's crazy. And that story should be something that everybody knows, because everybody's so obsessed with the gang culture and mob culture. How the hell do we not know that two Chinese gangs numbering in the thousands fought? That's crazy to me.
That is bonkers. But yeah, young June and Bolo feel so much better after that. I think they were both feeling a little bit ashamed over Father June getting sort of snuck up on and blown up like that. And
well, Ah Sahm was definitely feeling ashamed, and young June made him feel ashamed because he even said to him, like, what the hell are you sorry for? Where the hell were you? You weren't there, because he was off banging pennies, so now he's got to make up for it by doing some killing.
Yeah, so they definitely worked some things out there. They felt a lot better. So now it's
their therapist apparently is very sharp. He's a sharp therapist. Gives a lot of pointed commentary about their behavior.
Puns and more puns. But O'Hara decides it's time to work things out with Leary. So he drops by the Banshee. He
does. While the other two are just pondering how they've hacked away all the baggage of their past. I'm going to stop with that one. Exactly. I had to get it out. It was stuck inside me. It's in my throat. But yes, and that's where he goes to O'Leary, and this was the move I didn't expect. He set him up, and this is a move I used to do to my dad, and this works really well. If you're ever trying to convince somebody that you want, like, you need a person to agree with you and give you permission to do something. What you do is you come up with a like an 80% argument. You give them something that they can easily pick apart and shoot down, and you'd be like, it was kind of a stupid idea. Then they will have the idea that you wanted them to have, which is what O'Leary does here.
Yeah.
Or O'Hara says here to O'Leary. Well, you can do it. You set it up.
He says, well, I guess I have to pay Jack Damon off, because I never should have gotten into debt to the Feng Hai. And no, he says.
Oh no, he doesn't say that he's in debt to the Feng Hai. He just says that he owes Damon.
Right.
And he never should have let Damon stake him. And then he asks O'Leary to clear his debt for him or talk to Damon for him, and he's like, "No, I'm not. You're a bad bet.
You're dumber than a blind dog."
And then he goes, "Oh, well, yeah, I never should have borrow money from the Feng Hai." And that's when
he did sneak up to it a little slower.
Yeah.
But yeah, as soon as Leary finds out that Damon, who used to be like one of his crew, or at least kind of surrounding him, is working for the Chinese, now Leary wants blood.
I think he was a crooked cop who was working for both Leary and O'Hara. That's my understanding, because he used to work for O'Hara, because he says, "You can't boss me around anymore." Yeah.
No, he definitely worked from the police, but he was part of Leary's crew before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so now Leary's going to go stew on Damon working for the Chinese and get really, really mad about it.
That gobshite.
Yeah. And then we open on one of the most gorgeous food shots for this episode, those beautiful Spring Festival peach buns.
I am not a fan of peaches, so I've never had those buns, but I do love bao so much.
They're filled with pork.
Oh, okay. Well,
they just look like peaches.
Oh, okay. Well, if they're bao and they have pork in them, then I've eaten them. But if they have peach in them, I've never eaten them because I'm allergic. But
No. They're just decorated specially for Spring Festival. Sometimes they're like birthday food. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've just eaten bao by the bushel in the basket. I'd never had them as part of a festival.
I love some bao.
Yeah, oh God, I love them.
In fact, as a kid, that was one of the bonuses of growing up here is when you went down to downtown Seattle, if you went to Pike Place, there were like 6 places where you could get just fresh bao.
Oh God, you can only get dim sum in certain places out here because we don't have much Cantonese food. But to anybody who's listening to this and doesn't know what the hell bao are like they're like steamed wontons basically. So
it's a wheat bread and it's a little bit sweet, and then it's typically stuffed with the sweet barbecue pork, but you can also get it with like chicken and mushrooms
I love that
or whatever.
Sweet barbecue pork so much. Oh, it's
right.
So good. And the bread isn't like bread that you've had if you've never had bao. It's spongy.
Yeah.
Almost, the texture would almost be, it doesn't taste like a Twinkie, but the texture is almost kind of Twinkie-like because it's spongy.
Right, and because it's steamed to puff up rather than baked to puff up, it has this constantly sort of like very soft texture. There's no like sort of firmness or crispiness to it at all. But yeah, it as childhood food, it is one of the most comforting, warm, delicious things that you just want to bury your face in.
Oh, they're so good. And then you get dumplings or wontons alongside them, and those would be boiled then. So it's, yeah, but they complement each other, and they're all served as part of dim sum.
Yes.
Oh, I'm actually drooling. I'm drooling.
Yeah, because you get the little kind of silver dollar sized ones in dim sum, but you get like the big, like like if you're a little kid that you need 2 hands to eat that are street food.
I can't believe you got to eat those as a little kid. That's so dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really lucky. Okay, so we're having the conversation at a Spring Festival meal. It's super fancy.
Not to interrupt you, but that is the perfect food to give a child too, because that way they're getting their protein, but it's sweet, so it's almost like a little candy thing too, because kids are such a pain in the ass about food. Like you'd have to get a kid to stop eating those rather than to get them to start.
Oh yeah. In fact, it's really funny. China was one of the first cultures to get sugar, but it was a real pain in the ass to get. So it was used as a spice, and so it goes into all sorts of foods. Dessert was very, very fruit-based. Dessert tended not to have a lot of sugar in it. And so you find sugar as a spice sprinkled in a lot of what we would consider like dinner foods. Breakfast. Well, not breakfast. You wouldn't have sugar at breakfast. That's silly. But because they got sugar at a very different stage than America did, and in a lot smaller quantities, they would use it in sort of what we would consider savory foods pretty commonly to make them fancier.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I'll be damned.
So fancy dinner, beautiful place settings, a zillion people, and it's clearly like the gang dinner. Are you at the head table of this Chinese banquet? That's how you knew you were like a big dude in the long Z.
Yeah. This had kind of, I mean, it's like those in the mobster movies where everybody's sitting around and they're like, pass the gravy, and it's just huge bowls of spaghetti and shit. It's the same feel. It's like The Godfather, and except they're eating way better food.
Yeah. And they start talking about like, dude, what the hell was going on with Feng Hai? I mean, that was ridiculous. And Long Zi is like, wrong. There's the body dumped outside. That's what happens.
Yes. And then they run outside. The monk like guys that runs outside, and then he takes off after the carriage like he's going to run down this dark carriage.
But they did talk about the Feng Hai hit. And Long Zi's like, I don't want to go to war, man. War would be bad. And Mai Ling and Liang look at each other and are like, And so you know that Long Zi has no idea what's going on right now.
Then he sees a corpse and he's like, what did you do? Why?
There you go.
Why? Damn you.
damn it. Now I'm going to have
Yeah.
to fix this.
Like, we are here in business, you sons of bitches. Too old for this shit.
Precisely, but
Yeah. This man is just trying to coast into his death, make a little cash on the side. He doesn't want any problems. But, of course, the young people, as they are wont to do, are just out there to fuck shit up.
Yep. But before we do that, we get another chatty scene, and this one's pulled drink right out of a romance novel with Richard Lee sitting on the porch with the shotgun, and Mrs. O'Hara comes out with a sandwich for him.
Is that pulled right out of a romance novel?
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, it's got banter, it's got good, like, sort of excessive good manners, it's got sarcasm, it's got humor. I mean, yeah, that was straight out of a certain kind of romance novel right there.
Romance novels really are sarcastic as hell. They lean real heavy into sarcasm, I've noticed.
The fun ones do, yeah. There can be ones that are played dead straight, but I never read many of those because, I mean, it's only 250 pages, but I still have better things to do with my time.
Let's be clear and say we're not referring to the bodice rippers that you guys might be thinking, the Harlequin novels with Mike O'Hearn on the cover. We're talking about actual well-written books right now.
Well, I mean, even the Harlequin ones would have a scene like this where it's like, oh yeah, your manners are real nice, but you don't know how to lie. I mean, that was straight out of a Harlequin romance right there.
And then he tells her that her sandwich was delicious, and she's like, oh, now you're learning how to lie.
Yeah. But
she almost doesn't look like she's going to cry for 1 second.
Right. Yeah. So I got a good laugh out of that scene.
That woman's face is so fraught in every scene, and plus the way they have her lit, it looks like she is just contemplating suicide at all times. Like, goddamn, death will be so nice.
Yeah, oh, the dark circles under her eyes are dark or darker.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so speaking of Mrs. O'Hara, we go back to see what's up with Mr. O'Hara. So Bill and Leary are sitting in the pub, and who should walk in?
And then we have Damon, big old Damon.
And he starts talking shit to Leary, you know, yeah, I used to be on your crew, but you treat your guys so bad. You treated my dad like shit. I don't have time for you. I'm making better money. Like, yeah, he's just talking shit a mile a minute.
Yeah, my dad died a drunk and penniless in this bar. So fuck all y'all. I'm collecting for the Chinese. And then Leary's like, well, you can collect for the Chinese, but you got to fight me first.
Yeah. It's time for fight number 2. Fight.
You know, we have the sense that back in the day, there was a lot of, like, all this nobility and this honor and all this shit. And I personally, being a guy who can fight and likes to fight, like, if I had to collect money out of a person who was, an adaptive athlete, I'll say, like a man who walked with a cane, who was clearly, like, not capable.
Yeah.
I would have a real hard time beating on him, but Leary has no problem. I mean, he did everything but kick the cane out from under the man and start wailing on him.
Well, he did insult his mother a couple of times.
Yeah, and Leary was really being nice at first, now that I think of it. He offered him a glass of water. He was trying to make it civilized, like, I'm just going to hand you a beating for working for the Chinese, and that's going to be it. Although, then he goes, at the end, then it seems like he was trying to kill him the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and no,
I saw this as a much dirtier fight, whereas the guy he just went and wailed on in the ring of his boyos to just sort of, like, know your place. No, I think he takes working for the Feng Hai as a serious problem and a serious insult, because that fight was dirtier from the beginning.
Well, boxing back then was dirty as hell. I mean, they did a lot of headbutting and a lot of grappling, and it probably involved less kicking than most boxing matches did at the time. But it was really well choreographed. Because they were throwing a lot of, like, in fact, the way that Leary fights, it looks like he is actually striking poses from photographs or, like, illustrations of how you should be fighting back in those days. I mean, he's dead. Every bit of his posture, every uppercut he throws looks like a photograph of an uppercut from that time, or an artist's rendition of an uppercut from that time. It's amazing. He really, like, posed, but in motion. It was phenomenal.
I super enjoyed the contrast of the two fight scenes in this episode, because it was sort of like, you know, Eastern fighting looks like this, and Western fighting looks like that. And both of them were so picturesque and so awesome that way. I just super enjoyed the contrast.
I did too, and it's kind of one of those things where I have great regrets being an American male in certain regards, because growing up with this spirit of rugged individualism that we have in the United States, we're taught to fight like Leary, where you just eat as many punches as you want, because you will not stop going forward until the other person is done. And you just keep going forward and just eat punches and just be the indomitable, unmoving object. And that seems like America's general motif.
Yeah.
And we could definitely stand to learn to dance and...
dodge occasionally?
And what's that?
Dodge occasionally?
Yeah, slip a punch. I maybe not break my nose every single time I get into a fight.
But that was really a fun one. And for me, at least in this fight, there was that moment where Damon got in a good one and Leary had that look on his face. You made me bleed my own blood.
Yeah, oh yeah. But they have to do that. In every Bruce Lee movie, there's that he touches his fingers to his lip and then he looks at it and like, oh my God, I am actually bleeding. And then for whatever reason tastes it, because I don't know why they did that, but they do that.
It's very dramatic.
Yes. I need to taste my own blood in order to go berserker.
Yes.
Never mind the fact your mouth would be filled up with blood at this point in an actual fight. So you've already swallowed some blood. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So he gets him on the ground. He's going after him, and Leary is going to get his pound of flesh.
Well, that beating was actually worse than the beating in Gangs of New York. Will you not agree?
Oh, I would agree.
That was the most vicious ground and pound I've seen in a movie outside of Drive, where he stomps the man's head into like a ripe pumpkin.
I mean, there's a thing because Amsterdam was actually lying on a table, whereas this guy had his head on cobblestones, which made it much worse.
And took a full 1998 Hammer House in Pride Fighting Championship style Mark Coleman ground and pound on the cobblestones. Nearly caved the man's head in.
But
then he got up and he was like, well, Bill, you better kill that piece of shit or else he's going to hunt you down and kill you when he gets up and gets healed by the Chinese.
And that is when Leary gets his second pound of flesh.
Yes, and it's also where they could have played the end of Innocence to that scene because not that Bill was in any way innocent at all, but this is where he officially changes from being a cop to a criminal, because he takes the shillelagh / walking stick that O'Hara had been using and uses it to cave his head in.
Yeah, and I was looking at that. There were so many ways Bill potentially...
After he fake helps him up, offers him a hand, bashes him in the face with the handle of the stick, and then pounds his head. I mean, it was vicious.
Well, see, here's the
cruel.
thing. He's going to have to kill in cold blood because, Bill has killed in hot blood however many times. Doesn't matter. That's a whole different thing. But, killing a helpless man like that is a turn around a corner. And I was wondering how he was going to go about doing it. And, oh, my God, he goes after him like a rat with a shovel. There was nothing graceful about that.
No, he didn't even do it fast. Like Young June to the guy who blew up his dad. He just slit the man's throat and called it a day.
Right.
This man just took his time lightly smashing in a man's face that was already pretty well smashed in.
Oh, geez. And then he has to go hard. And, Bill's working things out.
He had a service revolver on him, probably. He could have just put it to the man's chest and pulled the trigger.
Oh, yeah. No, that was an ugly death. And I have to wonder how much of it was Bill just, if I'm going to go dark, I'm going to go dark all the way. But... Bill is doomed now. Doomed, very doomed.
I mean, he's been doomed from jump. The man was, he was a hanged man walking through the entire thing. But now he's just, like you said, from every direction, he has no corner anymore to get in. His wife's not in his corner. Nobody believes him. Everybody hates him. When he gets home from the thing, he just locks himself in his bedroom. And because I'm a weirdo, I can't imagine lying to the person that I live with. It doesn't make any sense. But to have this mountain of lies sat atop you at all times, so you can't tell the woman you live with, you've devoted your life to ostensibly, the one person you should be able to go to in any situation, and you've cut yourself off from that. This is a man who needs therapy. He needs a therapist. He needs Dr. Phil.
No, Dr. Phil would just...
No, he needs a real doctor. He needs a real doctor.
Dr. Phil would just take the rest of your money. But at this point, being a Catholic man, dude needs to go to confession at least. But you can see in his face at that point, he thinks that, like, he is too broken for confession.
He's in too deep. Yeah, he's in too deep now. He can't, like, he is just a demon now.
But speaking of churches used by criminals for different purposes, we're in the Buddhist temple, and it's the most mafia, like, growing up watching mafia movies.
Yep, the same thing where they meet in the church because it's sacred ground where nobody will do anything weird. They do the same thing at Buddhist temples in China. It's pretty cool to see that that's such a
universal,
like a universal thing, don't you think? Like to find that the behavior of criminal organizations around the world, regardless of creed, regardless of politics, it's all the same.
Yeah, the temple is still sort of like the sacred ground, and this is where the meet's going to happen. And you can just sort of see behind them that the younger guard coming up, they're like, what's with all this civilized bullshit? Like, fight.
Yeah, what are you shaking this man's hand for? He tried to blow you up, and like, it's fun. But then they do all that like sly. I personally, I assume that this is what happens in everybody's head, because I don't think anybody's as slick in real life, because you're too pissed off to be calm, cool, and collected and say all these like double entendres and wry remarks. You're just standing there like, motherfucker, I want to kill you. And but these two make all these veiled comments to each other and talk about how they have this shared history. And then when they walk away, along as he's like, oh yeah, he's gonna kill me.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of a nod to the Chinese language and its propensity to be really good for double entendre. I think it's also a nod to like these guys being the old dudes, and they're able to put in that detachment because they've both survived a lot of like really harrowing shit.
And they're old. They're hot-blooded, or they're not so hot-blooded anymore. Like, you know, the
precisely
boiled off.
Yeah, I did really super appreciate that moment where they're like shaking hands, and you can sort of see that Hop Wei wants to be the American Chinese gang, whereas the Longzi, or at least Longzi himself, is still really clinging to that Chinese sensibility. Like, you look at their dress.
Oh, yeah, because they're dressed in that Chinese Western suit with the Hop Wei, and then you have lots of traditional dress on the other side.
And I mean, and Longzi is wearing like gold or silk with gold embroidery on it. I'm like, yeah, he's flashing the power there.
Oh, that outfit was a flex?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was gorgeous, but it also was very emblematic of Longzi being the old guard, and it was time for that to clear away.
Well, he does also look every bit like the man you scale a mountain to fight. Right. In every old Chinese movie. I mean, he's missing the gigantic eyebrows. He doesn't have the Juice Man eyebrows that most of them have, but other than that, nobody can top Juice Man's eyebrows. They could win a fight on their own. I don't know what it is about powerful eyebrows that Chinese people think lends to fighting ability, but they do.
It makes for a very theatrical glare, and you can't argue with that.
That's true. Either that or light it so everybody looks 15 years older than themselves, and they always have a furrowed brow.
Oh, one other thing I wanted to pull up is they've used the phrase Gold Mountain several times in Warrior.
Okay.
And that is, so the owner of the saloon in the previous episode used that about his wife. You know, she's my Gold Mountain. And then they talk about Gold Mountain here. The coolies got there and the gold wasn't on the mountain. It was underneath.
Yes.
Gamshan is a Chinese phrase that's used on the regular to refer to the gold fields of the West. And so like in the Yukon, in British Columbia, in San Francisco, and because San Francisco is sort of the first gold field, it gets Gaogamshan, which is Old Gold Mountain.
Okay.
And so that is like, that's a slang that you'll hear a lot for America. You'll also hear, there's a toponym where it sort of sounds like the English word in Chinese. And so that'll be Meiguo, which is, you know, sort of like America, which means beautiful country.
America. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It does. Yep. We are a Meiguo Ren.
Yes. Yeah. So the fact that they keep, like, there's some made up slang, but then there's also.
It is pretty amazing that the Chinese refer to us as the beautiful country, and most Americans refer to Chinese as subhuman.
Yeah. They wouldn't even know that at the time. They're like, I forget what the one for Germany is, but it comes out to lawful country.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But the fact that they keep on using that phrase "gold mountain" is like, that would have been real slang, but that was written down so often.
Gold Mountain and White Mountain. Damon always he keeps talking about how he's going to send O'Hara to the White Mountain.
That's the Feng Hai and the whole, like, Mongolian legend of the mound of bones so high that it made the White Mountain.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, no, that's much more gruesome.
There are a lot of mountains.
Yeah. So since we're talking names here, something I wanted to bring up is the last two episodes, like, are very indicative of suffering and fighting and everything. And so when read from, like, the warrior side, the male side, they mean one thing, but it struck me they mean something to women very different.
Interesting. Okay.
And so for episode 5, Blood in the Shit, to a woman that would refer to your job nursing after a fight, but also to childbirth.
Okay.
So you'd be suffering those. And then this one, chewed up, spat out, and stepped on after the fight, oh yeah, you look like hell, blah, blah, blah. And so possibly a guy who goes through that kind of beating and comes out the other side might be looked at as more honorable. Chewed up, spat out, and stepped on is a warning that girls are given to this day about sex before outside marriage.
Oh, referring to Penny then, I guess.
I don't know if the writers did that on purpose, but if you talk to girls or women who grew up in evangelical cultures to this day, the reference like, oh, do you want to be like a piece of gum that was chewed up, spat out, and stepped on? Nobody will want you if you have sex before you get married, or if you have sex outside of marriage.
When I leave the house now, I just get really high and then walk to the gym, and I don't really talk to many people. I just try to keep it moving. Whew. Luckily, we don't have any Southern Baptists that live around me. That's just awful. Wow. Just what the fuck?
Yeah, so I don't know if the writers did that on purpose, but I was like, this is very interesting with the double entendre that they're putting in here, even if they don't mean to, because it works for the women in this story.
Well, one thing about art is that it doesn't matter what the original intention was, because once you create the art, it's part of the world, and the world interprets it however they want to. So it doesn't fucking matter what your intention was. It's a cool double entendre.
And I mean, more praise for this show, because they put these layers in and they've built a rich enough world that lots more people can find things than very sort of shallowly written shows, and it's so much more fun to watch.
You can seriously climb into this show and live in it. You can see what, like, oh, I'd be sitting at that corner of that bar, or oh, I'd probably be over there, or ooh, that looks delicious. Like, you can see where you'd be. It's so cool. I love this show.
So another excellent episode with not as many fights as you'd like, but I'd still say some excellent fight scenes.
Absolutely. Oh, I did find one historical miss on this show.
Okay.
There is the Chinese used to, it was in newspaper articles that I happened across when I found that fight.
Oh, newspapers are great.
The Chinese and Mongolians in very particular were really big on playing war music before they would go into battle. So everybody knew that a fight was coming. Like, you could if you were walking down the street and you heard Chinese flutes and a Chinese fiddle at midnight, you knew they were appeasing a war god, and the people in that building were going to be doing some killing the next day. Yeah, and it was those two instruments in particular, the Chinese fiddle and the Chinese flute, played at really high pitches. The Mongolians were huge with that, and people were like, if you hear that, just go away.
So when you're talking about the Chinese fiddle, it's that one-stringed instrument, right?
Yes.
But yeah, anytime you hear sort of like, if you look up any Mongolian fight or horse riding videos on YouTube, that's the instrument they're playing.
Yep. Yeah, I think the Who use it as well.
Okay.
HU. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're a Mongolian metal band. They do throat singing and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, okay. And they call themselves The Who. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, they just turn themselves into human didgeridoos. And
very cool.
That's pretty much what Mongolian throat singing sounds like to me, is a human imitating a didgeridoo.
Oh, yeah. No, throat singing's a thing.
At some point, we'll have to go into the music because I find, even though I live there, I find Asian music, and in particular Southeast Asian music, to be rough. It's rough. As they said on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, it sounds like whales raping each other.
That is brutal. Well, maybe that's part of the reason they picked up American pop and American rap so rapidly and kind of bent it to their will. I guess.
It still doesn't sound like war music to me, though. Like, does Chinese opera sound like war music to anybody but Chinese people?
As war music? I mean, plenty of Chinese music sounds like something you'd play to, send shivers down the spine of your enemy.
I guess it does sound kind of eerie with the high-pitched singing.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking back to the Gangs of New York again, and the singing going on in there, and I'm like, I don't see a fight happening to that. I mean, I know it happens on stage all the time, but it just doesn't seem like fight music to me. You want something a little more high-paced.
Yeah, my knowledge and understanding of Chinese music is even worse than my ability to reproduce tones.
Well, at least we share that significant handicap between us.
All right.
I'm so bad at it, I might as well be in a wheelchair. It's bad.
Well, why don't we wrap up this week? So we can, head on out to episode 7 next week.
Episode 7, where Richard Lee's good name is coming into question.
Oh, no. Okay, I'll look forward to seeing what happens to my favorite Georgia jawline. In the meantime, where can we find you on the internet, Jamie?
You can find me at Plague of Strength on Instagram or at plagueofstrength.com.
And you can find me at the History of American Food podcast and THOA Food on various different internet.
What was your episode last week or what's your most recent episode on the food podcast? I love that podcast. I just haven't had a chance to listen to it recently.
This week I'm going on about war corn and, how people ate and drank and used and made stuff out of corn during America's early wars, and how the whole changing markets and changing technology and just being in a country at war changed the way people ate and food moved around.
If that was going to be a Jeopardy category, it would be years nobody in America gives a shit about for 1,000. That's amazing, because people don't even know that 1776 to 1789 we were under a different constitution. Just that, and how many presidents do we have? 14. So that's a fun period of time to talk about. I'm looking forward to checking that out.
All right. Well, I will see you next time then for episode 7, The Tiger and the Fox.
All right. Until then.
All right. Bye-bye. We're on Instagram at pcgpodcast, and you can always reach out to us by email at pcgpodcasters@gmail.com. And you can find more dope beats like this one from royalraven.com.